Welcome to the What's Your Story podcast, where we share the extraordinary stories of women just like you in the hopes that you too will consider your own story and how God wants to use you for His glory. I'm Stephani Cook, a life coach, Enneagram coach, speaker, empty nester, and big Tennessee Vols fan. My co-host, Hannah Conway, is a best-selling author of Christian fiction, mom of three, the social media marketing and women's ministry director at our local church in Clarksville, Tennessee, and she roots for the Kentucky Wildcats. Yet somehow, we make it work. We both love stories and consider it a privilege to meet new friends and introduce them to you each week. We are so glad that you are taking a few minutes of your day to spend time with us, and we hope that you'll be back for a new episode each week and share our podcast with your family and your friends. Now let's get to today's episode of the What's Your Story podcast. This is my question. So that is your job. Your job is to stand in front of people and convince is not the right word, but encourage them. Encourage them.
Promote our pathways.
Yeah, well, and encourage them to consider education as a career. So what knowing what you know, being where you've been, and you are an honest person, I can say. I mean, I know.
Too honest sometimes.
Well, I was going to say, I know you well enough to know you're not a smoke blower at all. So what do you say? Like, how do you encourage these young men and women? Many of our listeners know we are former educators and still have parts of our hearts in the field. Perhaps you are aware that there's a national teacher shortage, and many school districts, including our own in Clarksville-Montgomery County, are seeking ways to think outside of the box. On today's episode, we invited Traci Koon. Besides being one of my dearest friends for almost 30 years, Traci works as an Educator Pipeline Facilitator for our school system and has more than 25 years of experience in the field of education. Whether you work in the field, whether you have school-age children or grandchildren, or might even be considering education as a future career, this conversation is for you. So sit back, relax, and enjoy today's episode of the What's Your Story podcast with Traci Koon.
We're doing this, girl. We're rolling and recording. Right. Hey, so last night we had our women's event at church.
With Dorena. How did it go?
It was wonderful. And so Dorena and I we follow each other on social, and she was on our podcast. And so we have Zoom, but I've never met her in person. And oh my goodness, she's precious. I was like, we got to have you on again. And she talked about graceful and being full of grace. And as I'm working on our identity in Christ, that's my new project, my book thing that I'm working on. She brought up a point that was so interesting, that we should be marked by grace. We should be people of grace, and that it is the very foundation and what our salvation is made of. And so part of our identity is being people of grace. And I was like, oh, girl, I'm writing that down because I don't have that in my book. I do now. Mm-hmm. It was so good. And it was a beautiful night. So it was nice.
I'm so excited.
I know. It was
and I also want to talk about your weekend because Sweet Miss J, who our listeners know that you guys adopted, and she competed in a pageant.
She did.
And won something special.
She did. She won Miss Congeniality.
Just so sweet.
I know.
I love that.
And that girl has so much confidence. And, just me as her aunt, now her mom, knowing her story and just watching her grow and struggle through some really hard life things, it was really this beautiful time to see her just shine and perform, like just really courageous, and just rocked it. And to see her support a lot of the kids from the student ministry and some of the adults that work with the student ministry that came to support her and to cheer. It was one of those nights where you're like, God, thank you. I needed that. It was just this beautiful closure,
Well, I've had so many people. So we actually last night were at a high school basketball game because we went to support some friends of ours too. Yes. And so many of the folks that were adults that were at the pageant came and said, please tell Hannah what a great job Jay did and how funny. They were like, she's so funny.
She is. And oh my goodness, like she just cracks me up, and she wants, like, she wants to make people laugh, and laughter's just been such good medicine for her in her life and things that she's gone through. And she's just really funny.
Well, that's exciting.
I know,
You've had quite the week in the weekend.
Oh yeah, girl,
you're burning the candle at both ends.
I'm here.
You are here.
I'm late,
and I'm glad you're here. You're a little late. It's okay. It's all good. It's all good.
Oh,
yeah.
It's awful. But
So
But did you want to mention anything about Saturday and the game that went down? And
was there a game?
Yeah. I
don't recall there being any.
It
was
Kentucky
awful.
Game. Yeah.
And it was terrible. It was so painful.
I was like, I can't even watch this.
It was so bad. It was so bad. Congratulations.
I don't even want to take congratulations.
Congratulations to the Kentucky Wildcats.
Are you
literally killed us.
And
I'm okay now. I mean, during the game, not so much, but yes, I'm good.
So my dad was in the hospital last week, which is, this crazy story. He's okay. He's okay, listeners. It's all good. He's just a stubborn old man, and he needs to take better care of himself. So anyway, while he's in the hospital, Kentucky was playing Vandy, and he's like, "What channel is it on?" And so he's ringing the nurse, trying to find the Kentucky-Tennessee game, or I'm sorry, the Kentucky-Vandy game. I'm like, Dad, you don't call the nurse for that.
I can't say if I were not in the same situation that I might not have done the same thing. I rushed home last night to watch a ball game, and we did barely pull it out with Vandy. So yeah, our boys are on the struggle bus, but our girls are really good this year. So
yes, this is accurate. And so, hey, by the way, there was a CHS Rossview game last night. Who won? Do you know?
CHS.
Oh, okay. I won't be too excited. I mean, we're former Rossview people, but my kids are at CHS, so I know it's.
I love my Rossview friends.
I do.
Please hear me, Rossview friends. I love y'all so much. I will never root for Rossview in a sporting event.
Oh, you heard it live. Yeah. We're gonna get some hate mail for that one.
Yeah. Well, and of course, my daughter's dating the Clarksville High basketball coach's son. So
yes,
yes. I mean, it was fun. It was fun.
And purple's pretty. Purple goes with a lot. So
it's pretty. Yeah.
So we do have a really fun guest as we're talking about schools and all of that, and even my own daughter, my oldest, who's wanting to get into education. So we have a special guest here that I think our Clarksville listeners and area listeners will know.
Yeah. And I've already told her. So one of the great things, one of the things that makes you a good interviewer is if you don't know all the details about someone. And I can't say that that's the case about our guest today, because Traci was literally at the birth of at least one of my children, both of my children.
I didn't know that.
I've changed diapers and rocked.
Were you her birthing coach?
No.
Not quite there, but I think I was the first person that held both of them when she came home from the hospital.
Yes.
Yeah.
So she's kind of my ride or die.
Non-family person.
That's really wonderful.
So we have a long-standing friendship. Cool. We don't get to spend as much time together as we once did, but we do make it intentional. At least twice a year, we have a birthday dinner, which may or may not even be in the same month.
Very true. Yeah,
it's just whenever.
Sometimes Stephanie's is in April, and sometimes it's July before we get together, and mine's October, and sometimes it's November, December, or January. But we make it a point, and I feel like if our lives ever slow down, I say that, our kids are grown now. We're going to get together more often. Well, neither one of us seem to be slowing down much.
Yeah, we don't do it. But if I needed a middle of the night gal,
I'm there.
That's your middle of the night
She's
gal.
my middle of the night gal.
I'm there.
Well, Traci, so we have Traci Koon with us, and it is so nice to have you here.
It is great to be here.
Yeah. So we're going to talk about her new position quite a bit. But we'll usually start with letting our guests introduce themselves. So tell us all about you.
All the things.
Well, I'm Traci Koon. I have been married. Let's see. Oh gosh, I'm going to get it wrong. I think it'll be 27 years this year.
Wow, congrats.
He was my college sweetheart, Charlie, and we have a daughter, Lexi. She goes to Austin P. She's studying business right now. I think she's leaning towards the business management, but maybe marketing. She is starting her junior year, so high school credits are amazing because she started college with one semester complete.
Oh,
so she's a semester ahead. So it's good on my pocketbook.
Yes.
And it's also good, for her to get through. The star of our family is our dog, Trixie.
Oh, we love our
We all love dogs.
Yes,
Trixie.
she's a little Yorkie Pomeranian, and she has trained the humans. That's what we say. We did not train her; she trained us, and she is 12, going on 13, and she rules the house. But
So cute.
Yeah.
Oh, I just love animals. So
I know, I
much.
do too.
Like, we should have an episode just dedicated to all the podcast
Let's do
dogs.
it.
Like,
Let's do
all
it.
of them.
Yeah.
but it needs to be
Wonderful.
visual,
Right?
They need
Yeah.
to,
Yes,
see the
they
pictures.
need to
we
see.
gotta see them.
So cute.
So Tracy's husband, Charlie, also hosts a podcast.
He
called
does.
Yeah, Clarksville Conversations.
No,
Yes.
that's fun.
Yeah.
So tell us how you met Jesus.
So, I was born and raised in church. I mean, in the womb, always been to church. My grandparents actually started 2 different churches that in Clarksville that are still going.
What?
Yeah. So long time ago. And as I got older, I had an older brother. And as I got older, he needed some more youth activities. So when we were 9, we changed churches and actually went to Hilldale Baptist.
Yeah.
I grew up there. And the Sunday that my family decided to join the church, you know, in Baptist church,
Right.
you walk down the aisle and you talk to the pastor and
That's
you say,
right.
we want to join this church. My mom said, well, you'll have to stay back because you're not saved yet. And she said, we're all going and, you know, we've all been saved. So you have to wait. And I stood in the pew and I said, I don't like this.
Right. What is
I want to
this?
go. I want to be part of this church too. I was already going to children's choir and Sunday school and all that. So that night I asked my mom, I said, why can't I walk down front? And she said, well, you have to be saved. I said, well, what's that?
Yeah, what's that?
And I knew, you know, I'd heard it all through Sunday school and things like that. But we talked about the scripture and we talked about the prayer and we actually prayed together but separately. She said, it's got to be personal. And I can honestly say I felt the Holy Spirit completely that night because she left the room and I sat there and I was like, okay, is it going to happen? Like, how am I going to know? I was 9.
Yeah.
I was
Wow.
9 and I physically felt the Holy Spirit come be a part of me. So, you know, throughout life, sometimes you think, was I really saved?
Right.
I was 9. Did I really understand? Or, wow, that's not something a saved person would do or say or think or act. And I always go back to that. I felt that physical presence. So I know I'm saved.
Right.
Yeah.
Yeah.
I have that assurance.
Since you were 9. I love that.
Yeah.
You can go back and be like, I remember that. Very cool. So why did you choose education as a career? So you're with CMCSS and Steph and I are both former CMCSS employees and
27 and a half years.
Ooh, okay.
Yeah. So it's my only career.
That's a hot minute, girl.
It's all I've ever done. And
Quickly go through kind of all that you've done if you
Okay.
don't care. Because
No, I don't
kind of
mind
where
if you-
you started and where you are now. Because you've had several different jobs within
I have.
education.
I have. So I started my very, very first job was at Ringgold Elementary School as an inclusionist resource teacher, and it was only 60%. So funny story. Ken Hudson was the principal at the time. His daughter and I had gone to middle school together. I had spent the night at his house. He had made me popcorn. And I was a December graduate. And so it was a snow day, and I was talking about, gosh, I need to find a job. Charlie and I were engaged. I was like, I got to have a job. I need a life. What am I going to do? And I knew that there was a position open at Ringgold, and I called him at home on a snow day. Now, that was not how you should do that nowadays.
Right, like, don't do that.
But at that time, in 1995, I called him and I said, do you know who I am? And he said, yeah, girl, I remember you. And I said, well, I hear you're going to have a job. And he said, come see me on Monday and we'll see. I was like, oh my gosh.
Oh my goodness,
This
right.
is not good. And by the end of our conversation, he gave me a tour around the school. So that was my first job. That was not going to be a full-time position.
Okay.
So I was like, I'm sorry, but I'm going to have to transfer somewhere because I needed a full-time position. I was
Right.
23 years old and
Right.
Starting out life and needed full time. And so I interviewed and went to Minglewood Elementary. Loved the Mighty Oaks. Still, I walk in there and my heart is just happy. I love that place. I worked with 3rd, 4th, and 5th graders with special education. And then at some point, gifted came under the special education umbrella.
Right.
So I taught gifted students 3rd, 4th, and 5th grade, or 2nd through 5th grade. And then I also did resource. I did some pull out. I did some inclusion. Pretty much every hour on the hour, I was changing to another grade level, another subject, another
quite
something.
A spectrum from one end to the other.
Yeah.
Wow.
And that's pretty much my career. I've always done one end or from one end to the other, all in the same day.
Wow.
From Minglewood, I got pregnant and decided that I needed to be out of work earlier in the day, other than an elementary school. So I transferred to Northeast Middle. Was at Northeast, I think 8 years. When I go count back, I can't remember if it was 8 or 9. It all starts running together. But taught there, and Stephani was my school psychologist. So we would eat lunch together sometimes, and spent 8 years at Northeast Middle. I am a Northeast high school graduate, so it was kind of like coming home, even though it wasn't home.
Right.
But in my classroom, I had my cheerleading jacket that had my name on it, had NEHS across the back, and I had my megaphone.
That's cute.
So that was always kind of a fun part of being at Northeast Middle. From there, I went to Richview. The reason that happened was, I never left a place because I was unhappy with what I was doing there. It was always because usually my kid or something.
Yeah, right.
What do? We do everything for our kids. She was going to Barksdale. And we were moving to where we were living where we are now, which was so close to Richview, 1 mile from Richview. And I thought, wow, I could get to Barksdale, Richview, home, all within like 2.5 miles. And so I moved to Richview. There I taught gifted, and that was all I taught, but it was 6th, 7th, and 8th grade.
Yeah.
I had the privilege of teaching some Cook children. I had both of them. And from there, I became an academic coach at Richview for the next 10 years.
Wow.
Yeah.
So you have just had this quite adventurous career.
It's from elementary all the way through middle school. I've never taught high school. Thought about it. I think I'd love it.
I do
I could
too.
see you doing
I
that.
do. I think I would love it. But I do work with some college students in the job I'm in now,
Right.
which is an Educator Pipeline Facilitator for CMCSS. It's a grow your own program. We started approximately 4 years ago. I've been in the role a little over 2 years. So that's what I'm doing now. And I work, instead of getting summers off, which everybody thinks teachers get summers off.
Oh, Lord.
We know that they don't.
Right.
But I do actually report to the office 12 months.
Wow.
So that's a change.
That is definitely, that's a change.
Yeah. So let's talk about the necessity of that program. So why did that even come about, and what have you seen kind of in your role, what problem that's solving?
So we have a national teacher shortage. I think everyone in the entire country knows that. And in preparation for some of the board meetings that we've done, and also we've presented at some national conferences lately and have a couple more coming up, the statistics show that in 1975, 22% of college freshmen were declaring education as their major.
Oh, wow. So that's almost a fourth of people.
A lot.
That's a lot.
In 2017, 4.6%.
No.
So that's a huge shift. People aren't going to college for education anymore.
Why? Why do you think that?
I think there's a lot of factors built in.
I feel like I could give you 10 reasons.
I feel like we all have theories.
We do.
So I am interested in the research. I'm interested in the research base, because if you've been in education, you've got some thoughts, right? You've got some ideas. But what have you guys discovered, Traci, in research, why people are either leaving the profession or not coming into the profession?
One thing is the baby boomer generation is the largest generation of history. They're all retiring.
Right. Right.
Many of them were teachers, and they're retiring if they haven't already, because the baby boomer generation is very huge. Like it's from 56, 57 to 80? I don't know.
It's like a huge.
I don't know the numbers.
Right.
But you think about it, that range of teacher is leaving. They're retiring. They've done it for 30 years. Some of them 35, 38 years. The demands on teachers are much different now. I was a special ed teacher. I know Stephani did school psychology. We are discovering there are a lot more labels, not in a bad way necessarily, but it's almost like every child needs something a little extra.
Differentiated instruction.
And that, it sounds great in theory. And it is. And I have seen teachers do it beautifully, but it's exhausting. I think people used to get into teaching for the summers off. And like I just said, we know that we don't get summers off.
Right.
But I think now the demands on teachers are so vast. They're having to play so many roles. And with the pandemic, I mean, I'm not blaming it. We have become very resilient and very able to adapt, but it's not come without a price.
Right.
Yeah.
And I think when you think about even traditional roles, I think the internet opened up a whole world to the generation that would be coming up now going into employment. And so, even when I was younger, you had doctors and police officers and teachers, and there were certain jobs you didn't have as much of. You couldn't see the whole entire world through the internet, right? You knew what you knew, like either what your parents did or your grandparents did or your neighbors did or people in your community, and so you looked to those occupations when you were choosing your occupations. And now the world literally is an oyster. Like you could live in Vermont and work in Tennessee. And so I think there's some of that too, because I think we're not just seeing shortages in education, but in police force, in nursing.
Yes.
And then I also believe personally with that increased demand, the respect has gone way down. And so it's really hard for someone to be asked to work so much harder with such little respect.
So I think you were heading right where my mind was going as well. Social media has not always been our friend.
No.
Right.
Anything can be taken out of context, videoed, put out there, and all of a sudden you are the person that's losing their job or that's being abused, yet it's spun to where you're the one abusing. Nobody sees what led to that moment of that. So there's a lot of backstory, and social media doesn't always give that backstory. Also, along with that, our students now, it's almost more productive or more prosperous for them to be entrepreneurs, to be social influencers, to do things like that, because they're going to get paid quite a bit, for doing those things. They have people that test out games, video games and things like that. There's so many different jobs now. Technology has opened the world to so many different jobs. There are people training for jobs right now that haven't been created yet.
It's amazing.
That blows my mind.
Right.
Yeah.
And so to want people to go into the teaching profession and to be in a classroom, sometimes with students that are struggling, students that not just academically, but emotionally and, physically, it can be very emotionally and draining for teachers. And we don't always make ourselves look great either. Sometimes on social media, we're talking about, oh my goodness, it's a full moon. These kids are going to be crazy. Oh my goodness, I don't want to work after Halloween because the kids eat candy and they're off the chain. That doesn't make our profession look good either.
Absolutely.
I agree. Yeah.
I agree with that.
And I think something else too that I read an article just this week and I had never thought about that was flexibility is huge, right? Everybody in the workforce right now wants flexibility. And in the past, I think education's beginning to kind of come on board of, okay, we're going to have to think outside the box. But in the past, you were in a classroom this many hours a day. I mean, teachers know, like Traci and I've had a lot of dinners together. And when she first, came out of the classroom, I was like, you can actually slow down. Like, you don't have to eat our meal together in 18 minutes because it's
you can go to the bathroom.
You can go
when I actually have to go.
That's right. I mean, we joke about those things, but that's a reality. The reality is like you go to work and you go this many hours and you get this long of a break, and it's
that's right.
And so not being able to have some of that flexibility, I think also may be a turnoff sometimes.
And honestly, I mean, we haven't even said this, but the pay, I know that is definitely a turnoff. However, I will say, in defense of our school system, we have one of the best starting teacher pay rates that I have ever seen.
Yeah.
I think people don't think about the benefits.
That is true.
If you are carrying the insurance and the benefits, it's astronomical how much the school system pays for your benefits.
Oh, yes.
How much they pay in compared to what you pay in. So when I truly think about what my salary is, I in my head say I make X amount,
right,
and not just what I see,
right, knowing that you have
day.
these benefits. That's right.
Yeah.
Another barrier I think is educational prep providers. They haven't always changed for the time. So sometimes teachers are not coming out, students are not coming out fully prepared, which is what our program at CMCSS, the Grow Your Own program, is trying to do. We're trying to change that. We're really following a residency model like a surgeon does.
Right.
So you think of a surgeon goes in and they spend hours and hours and hours with a master doctor who knows how to do all these things. So their first surgery, we're not going, oh my gosh, you can't take my appendix out.
Right.
A teacher often has 15 weeks in the classroom until they're in their first job, looking at all these faces, looking back at them going, oh my goodness, I wasn't prepped for this.
That's right.
You're the expert now. You should know what you're doing. Yeah.
But the teacher residency pathways, we put them in a school with a master teacher, just like that master surgeon with that resident.
They get, I mean, and I will say, I will be completely honest with you. So my oldest, who's getting ready to graduate, has applied for the program. She's excited about it, and we're hoping that it all goes well. So I went to this meeting to learn more about it, and I went as a former teacher, I was skeptical, I have to say.
Well, thank you for sharing that. Thank you for being transparent.
I thought they're going to sit here
and sugarcoat this.
Yes. Yeah. And they're going to act like it's all amazing and they're going to love being a teacher. And I was like, I'm about to ask some
hard questions.
But you all didn't. You came in and you were like, this program is tough. This is what's expected. Being a teacher is hard. And I appreciated that. And you were honest. You were like, we have a shortage. We are investing in you in hopes that you will, be invest in our children and our community. And I thought, I can get behind that.
Yeah.
I can get behind that.
Well, that was my question. So that is your job. Your job is to stand in front of people and convince is not the right word, but encourage them. Encourage them.
Promote our pathways.
Yeah. Well, and encourage them to consider education as a career. So what knowing what you know, being where you've been, and you are an honest person, I can say. I mean, I know.
Honest sometimes.
Well, I was going to say, I know you well enough to know you're not a smoke blower at all. So what do you say? Like, how do you encourage these young men and women?
I feel like teaching calls you.
Yeah.
And there are so many people that we've interviewed that have said, I went to school for accounting and it's not where I'm supposed to be. I was in the Army for 20 years and my heart has always been in teaching others. And I got to do that with, teaching PT or teaching whatever their regiment was or whatever they were doing. And now I'm getting out of the Army, or now I'm older and I want a chance to do what I think I was called to do many, many years ago. If you're not called to it, it's tough. Yeah. And you may not make it 30 years. I told you at the beginning, I'm in 27 and a half years. And you have to, it's all about a mindset. Anything you want to do in life, you've got to set your mind. I've always said in the classroom, sometimes people walk out and go, this was the worst day ever. But think about it. was it the worst day ever? Or was there one incident that you're carrying through all day? And I was in middle school, most of my years, all 6 periods or all 7 periods. If you look hard enough, and sometimes you don't have, hopefully you don't have to look hard enough, but if you look, you're going to find something great every single day. You just have to have the right mindset to be able to see it.
Right.
If you want to dwell on the negative, that's how your day's going to feel. That's how your job's going to feel.
It's in any job.
Absolutely. There's so many pros and cons in every single job. But if you just have a good mindset, if the culture of your building is supportive and encouraging, it does make that job not easier, but more enjoyable. And you've probably had bosses, and I've had bosses that when they love on you and you feel valued, you will work and you will get it done, no matter what you have to do. And so I think part of that comes from, I don't know that I answered your question. I think I veered off.
Yeah. But it's making me think too, because, a lot of what I do is I coach burnout teachers. Like that's where my heart is. That's when I left education, and stepped into coaching. Those were the people that were on my heart. And so I have a group, it's called On Purpose Insiders Group. And we talk about that stuff. And one of the things that we continue to say is you've got to go back to your why. You've got to go back to your why. And so if you remember the why, because like you said, it is a calling, like it is a ministry. It is a mission field. You have to look at, why am I here? What difference am I making? And I think, too, thinking about, and this can be true for lots of careers as well, but you don't know the impact you had today. You may not know that tomorrow. You may not know that this side of eternity. Right. But, I always share the illustration with teachers that you guys are like dominoes, right? Like you literally may just touch that one student that then touches the next student and the next student and the next student. Before you know it, you've got one of those mazes that you watch on YouTube where the dominoes are falling all over the place. Right. And you had a part in that. And so, I share all the time, and we all could name our favorite teachers. We all could name that person in our life that doesn't even know sometimes that they said that one thing that changed the trajectory of your life.
And sometimes it's not a teacher. No. Sometimes it's a coach. Sometimes it's an educational assistant. Sometimes it's an administrator. Sometimes it's the custodian, the bus driver. The bus driver. There was a great article about a bus driver, and a student, I think it was a second grader, probably going to get my facts wrong, asked them to come to their birthday party, and he did. And it was like the best thing. I feel like we don't promote the good enough.
Yeah. Right.
As teachers, as educators, as systems. I know I'm very close with our communications department because they help us market our pathways, and they are constantly putting good news out there. That I wish that would get shared more than the negativity sometimes.
Absolutely. And oh gosh, I can't say that enough. I will say, when I stepped out of the classroom, I knew that I wasn't going to be in the classroom forever. I knew that this was for a season and God had something else. And I wouldn't trade those years for anything.
What you learned from that is probably taken you through everything you've ever done since then.
Yes, I am a better person. Even the students that I was able to be with for that amount of time, I still see them. They find me. They're on social now. And even the friends that I taught with, we are still friends. I'm still in text groups. And it's been over 2 years since I stepped out.
That's huge. The community and the identity around that. And you just kind of know. And, I'm assuming it's probably that way in a lot of professions, but that was my favorite thing about it is you find your people.
Yes.
And you all kind of have that same, you're not all the same. You don't all have the same strengths and gifts, but you have the same heart.
Right.
Yeah.
And so you find your people. And
it's all about the students. When you said start with your why or remember your why. If we get away from that, we lose what our calling is and what we're supposed to do. And we can't stay in that place of, oh my gosh, I've got test coming up. I've got state tests. I've got this. Yes, those things are important. They're good. But we have to look at children as individuals and as humans and as people, because if we lose sight of that, they're not a number.
Right.
They're not a data point. We have to have data points because we all have to be accountable. You have that in every job you have. But we have to look at them and understand that they're coming to you with the best they have. And their best is maybe not where your expectation is. Maybe you've got to coach them and scaffold it to where they reach that. Maybe they don't have that foundation that you had. You have to relate to them. You have to listen. You have to talk to them, show them how interested you are, and just be not a friend necessarily, but be a light for them, be a safe place.
Right.
And then they're going to learn. The rest comes.
Yeah. And I just want to say on the flip side of that, I'm going to step onto a soapbox. So y'all just get ready, because we're talking a lot about teachers' perceptions. But the other thing that I would like to say is if you are a parent, assume positive intentions. I feel like we are so quick. And I mean, I've been a mom too that was upset with the teacher. Trust me. In fact, quick story, I will tell you guys. So Brady had a really difficult math teacher his freshman year of high school. She's amazing. Both of my kids are still Facebook friends with her to this day. But she was difficult. I mean, really, really difficult in a good way. But as a mom, I had not seen grades like that ever come home from him. And so I got panicked, and I emailed Jean Luna, who was the principal of Clarksville High at the time, and was like, this is not going to work. This is not going to work. I went into that mom mode. Teacher's fault. Something's going on. Can't possibly be my child. That we do. We've all done that. And she immediately said, just hang in there. Give her time.
Yeah.
Well, fast forward his senior year on family night, senior night for baseball, he invited that teacher as his favorite teacher to walk him across the baseball field. And Jean Luna was standing beside me, and she said, what about that email?
She didn't forget.
No, it was a lesson for me. It was a lesson for me to learn. And so I know that, again, I say that because I have been a parent and I've been in that position, but teachers are doing the best that they can. Are they perfect? Absolutely not.
Right.
But 99.999% of them have your child's best interest.
They do. And they work so hard, nonstop.
I agree.
They just do. And, I'll say we are huge advocates of education, obviously. And you are too, obviously, right?
For sure.
Education just makes such a difference.
Yes.
And so anyone who is listening to this and you even think that you are interested in education, just look into it.
Yeah.
It really is a game changer. It can change lives.
Yeah. And there are many programs out there like the one that I had the privilege of working with that will pay for it. Because that was one of the things that I think deters people from going into a teaching position, because they think I'm going to have all these student loans. College is so expensive.
Right. And then
I'm not going to have enough to pay those loans off. But there are many programs out there that will either forgive your loans if you work in a title school or certain places, or that will pay for your school as you go. We're not the only avenue. So if there are, if this is your desire, if this is your calling, feel free to email us. We have sent many people through the Tennessee Department of Education. We have some other programs that if you have a bachelor's degree, you can do a job embedded where you are teaching, getting a full salary while you're doing your credentials to become certified.
That's amazing.
So, and that's not necessarily our pathway, but we never turn anyone away. If we get a phone call or an email about that, we immediately go to our human resources experts, quality assurance experts, and things like that, and say, is there a place for this person? What can I tell them? Or can I refer them to you?
Right.
So that we can get them in the classroom and working with our students, because your expertise, teaching, you don't always have to go to college to know every single little thing in order to be the best teacher. Sometimes it's innate. Sometimes it's just good. You just have a natural ability. And if you know your content very well, and you're able to explain that to someone else, you can be a fabulous teacher. Some of the best teachers I had the privilege of working with were job embedded. They did not go to college to be a math teacher.
Right.
But they had math content, and they were able to learn the science and the strategies.
Right. The craft of
to be able to do it.
Yeah. And I do think that the pandemic, as many horrible things as it did, and I think we're learning, right? I think, we literally we had to jump out of the airplane and,
While
have to parachute on the way down, or however that phrase goes.
Yes. Build the airplane.
Build the airplane on the way down.
Yes.
Yeah.
Yes.
But I do think that it has forced us to think outside the box. And now we're seeing some big changes in education, and even in our district, the way things are being done. I know virtual learning is an option now. And, there's some other things that are coming. And so I'm encouraged for my friends in education, even though I know right now it may feel really, really difficult, that perhaps there may be some light at the end of the tunnel, as they say.
I just focus on students so much. I guess that's where my heart is. But you brought up virtual school. We have so many options. There's middle college. There's virtual school. Our CCT program, ways for students to learn trades as well.
That's amazing.
So there's so much of that out there that I feel like we need to get that word out as much as we're getting out the word of the teacher residency pathways.
Absolutely.
Because not everybody is destined for that.
Right.
Some people want to be a diesel mechanic. Some people want to work on airplanes. Some people
they want to be plumbers or welders,
electricians or linemen or whatever. We have to have all of those things in our society.
Right.
And so every one of those is important and is just as important as that child going to college as well.
Mm-hmm. Absolutely. And I love that we can say that out loud. Like, I feel like growing up in the 90s and graduated in 2002, all I heard was go to college, go to college, go to college.
Yeah.
And that's just not for everyone.
No.
It's just not. And that's okay. It's all right.
Absolutely.
To celebrate that. So I really feel like that we're doing a much better job of saying, okay, college is awesome. So is tech school. So are all these other programs. So I love that we are not just so college, but what are your likes and dislikes and passions, and what are you good at, and what would you like to do, and not just pushing, one way.
Right.
Yeah.
Right.
Yeah.
I agree.
We're going to run out of time, but one of the things I did want to touch on, and we touched on it a little bit, or kind of go back to that we did touch on, was there's what I would call a misconception that if you're in public education, you can't show your faith.
Yeah.
And I always felt like I was on the mission field the whole time. I was
Absolutely.
Every day.
And it wasn't because I had a Bible I was carrying around and I was,
right.
Right.
spouting out the
scriptures.
plan of salvation everywhere that I
Right.
went. But I want you to speak to that, because you see all kinds of teachers and you've been in all kinds of settings.
I feel like just what you said, if you're teaching in a classroom, you're focused on the content that you're teaching. You're not preaching to them.
Right.
So you can share your faith in ways that is just how you act and how you treat them and how you talk to them. One thing I used to do every single year was do a scrapbook, a get to know you scrapbook. And each class had one, and I would always do a page for each one of them. And on my page, I would always say, I'm a member of this church. I sing in the choir.
Right.
That was just my way of throwing it out there. I didn't look at you and say, you have to go to church or I'm not going to teach you anymore. That's the misconception, is that you can't push anything on students or even anyone in any job. You can't say, oh, well, you're wrong if you're not in this religion or in this group or in this club. It's the same thing. So you just do it by your actions, by how you treat them. There are times that, we would be in class and I would just say, yeah, that's a struggle. I'd have to pray about that. I didn't say you had to pray about it. I didn't stop class and pray, but just having those little things. We always say build relationships with students. It's so much a part of you that it just comes out naturally.
Right.
And when you're not forcing it down someone's throat,
which we should never be doing.
No. So that it just shows in your actions. And the beauty of that is that oftentimes students will come to you later or will share maybe part of their faith, because you've opened that door. I've walked in my classroom and put hands on both sides of the door and said, Lord, just cover this classroom today. Just help me to see every child with your eyes, not my eyes. Because, girl can get a little testy sometimes when you're on my nerves.
Well, and students can be a little testy.
You never know what they're coming from. And
that's true.
I mean, the stories of just some of my students, some of my most difficult students were the ones that I just ended up loving the most. So, yeah.
Yeah.
You just never know where they're coming from. And I'll say this, some of the most godliest people that I've met have been educators or in the education field. And so I never once felt like I couldn't share my faith. It was just a part of who I am, and it was who they were. And we had Bible studies on Tuesday morning. Our students had Bible led groups. Like I don't know, anyone that says God has been taken out of church has been taken out of schools. I don't know when the last time they've set foot in a school one, but
we're praying lots.
I know.
Say, you can't go through it without it.
Lots and lots of praying.
Yeah. Well, it's been amazing.
Well, is there anything that we'll be sure to share the information if anyone's interested in the program, how to get in touch with you, ask questions, all of that.
Yes.
Is there anything we haven't touched on as far as that's concerned that you wanted to share with us before we ask our last question?
You know, if it is your calling, if you do feel a pull towards teaching, don't think that it's not for you or that you can't do it. If you're called to it, you will be equipped. And there's scripture for that as well. And that's to any job that you are feeling pulled towards. Just don't always let the outside noise keep you from doing what you know you are supposed to be doing. Yeah. Because there's a purpose for every position.
Right.
And even if you just want to work in a school, if you just want to be the bus monitor, you're going to touch the future.
Right.
And our future is so important. I mean, and they're sitting right there. Our future president is sitting right there. Our future, next Billy Graham, I don't know another word to call, our next revival leader, evangelist, the next singer, the next influencer is sitting in a classroom right now.
Right.
So make that positive impact.
Yeah.
Thank you so much. So our last question is, what's your favorite story?
Oh gosh.
Real, movie, Bible.
She's a reader too.
Oh girl.
She reads as much as you read, I think.
Favorite story. I guess it's not maybe one story, but it's something that's occurred. I've had the blessing of several times is that to have a student, and most of mine were like middle school students, but to have one send you an email or send you or find you or send you a card or ask you to their graduation party or something like that. Those are those moments. And I had one time. I was at Richview, I think, and an email pops up and it's from Dr. B.J. Worthington, and he was our director of schools. And I was like,
oh no,
am I in trouble?
And it wasn't one of those mass ones that you're like, oh
no, it was to me only. And a former middle school student that I had thought I did not make a difference with, an underachieving gifted student, making C's and D's and failing. And I was like, what is your problem? Because, 130 IQ, whatever.
Right. Like, what are you doing?
She had said she couldn't find me. She emailed him and said, I know Miss Coon's still in the system, but I can't find her. Could you please share her information? Well, he forwarded me.
Way to go to the top.
That email. She was brave.
Let me find the director of schools to locate my middle school teacher.
I know. and I got that email and I just wept because I was like, oh my gosh. I mean, I can tell you her name right now in my head, but I was like, oh my goodness. Yeah. So you never know the seeds you're planting that one day she said, I realize why you were hard on me. Yeah. You always loved me, but you were, you pushed me hard and you made me mad many, many, many times. But it was because you wanted me to finally realize my potential. And I'm graduating with an honors diploma.
Wow.
Boom, boom.
Yes.
Yeah, from Rossview High School several years ago. But I'm graduating and I just wanted you to know. I was like, wow. Yeah. And Dr. Worthington, in his email, he said, thought you might want to follow up on this.
Yes.
Yes, sir. I think I
will.
I will. And I've had the blessing of a few of those. Right. So that's probably been my biggest, wow. Yeah. So it makes you think every day when you stand up there or anytime you're interacting with students or even just humans, you don't know what you're saying or setting in place or a seed you're planting.
Right. Yeah. And just to go on record, if you really want to give a teacher a shout out, go on to the director. Like, yeah, that's great. You want to make your teacher feel great? Sure. Send the director of schools an email like that, letting them know how awesome that they were.
Until they forward that email and the teacher about has a heart attack.
I'm just saying. That's a kudos.
Wasn't that great?
That's a great story. I love it.
Wow.
Love it.
Well, thank you so
thank
much
you for being here.
Thank you all for having me. This was so much fun. Can we do it next week?
Right?
Sure.
Can we do it
every
again?
time? We can have a third host.
Yeah, we could do that.
Yeah. It was awesome.
That was such a fun and important conversation, and we are so grateful to Traci for being with us and for sharing her knowledge and all that's going on in the field of education. If you are interested in perhaps finding out more about the program that she is a part of, you can contact her using the contact information in our show notes, and I'm sure that she would be glad to answer all of your questions. Also, if you are an educator and you are struggling with burnout and you want to know a little bit more about coaching with me, feel free to reach out to me. I would love to talk to you as well, and I always offer a free consultation session just to find out if coaching might be something that you're interested in. I love educators, and I would love nothing more than to be able to encourage you. As always, we are so grateful that you were with us today, and we hope that you'll be back with us next week for a brand new episode of the What's Your Story podcast.